Thank you to Charles for supplying us with a copy of his game. This is a product I received for free, but is in no way a hashtag ad. All opinions expressed are mine and mine alone. Enjoy the video. As a kid, I used to love my original PlayStation. Growing up with it always there, it really did set the foundation of my love of video games. And one of my favourite games as a child was Spyro the Dragon. There was something so innocent and fun about Spyro that as a child, I couldn't help but love, even if I wasn't really good at the game. So when the developer of today's game, Charles, brought it to my attention that this was like Spyro alongside themes of technology and PCs specifically, well, it's needless to say that I was pretty interested in what he had to offer. Kane from Vivichum here, and today we find out if Charles's title stacks up as we ask Data Dream, how bad can it be? The story of Data Dream starts with an unnamed software developer at his desk. Drained from his continuous work on his project, he falls asleep in what may be the trippiest looking falling asleep animation that I've ever seen. You are then transported to a surreal dream world representing a computer. Components come to life and are represented through a variety of characters. All is not what it seems though, and the player, taking control of this Bart Simpson looking dude called I.O., goes on an adventure to save the computer world from a malicious invasion. The story itself is pretty straightforward and does have some very interesting concepts. It just doesn't quite live up to those ideas in execution. The dialogue scenes are weirdly paced, having to click through each line, which admittedly is fine and a normal thing for video games, but there isn't actually any kind of indicator telling you to do so, other than the awkward, never-ending pause after a line is finished being read. Speaking of reading lines, the voice cast in this game isn't incredible. Some of the effect-manipulated voices are pretty entertaining, but a lot of the performances come across as relatively flat, something which takes away from the intrigue that the game tries to build. Personally, I feel that the voiceover is an unnecessary addition to Data Dream, and whilst I do appreciate the effort gone into finding a voice cast, sounds, gestures, and maybe even the Banjo-Kazooie style pitch-shifting noises would allow the narrative to stand out more. Graphically, Data Dream seemed to flip-flop in terms of my opinion. I found myself really liking the environments and textures for the most part. The use of circuitry as a motif throughout the levels looks really nice, especially when the light shines through it. We also have the little design elements sprinkled throughout, like the ram being an actual person with a ram's head, or there being a literal Trojan horse entering your computer. That stuff I found really amusing, but on the other side of things, everything just kind of felt soulless, and maybe that's intentional because it's a machine, but it felt like it was lacking life, especially in its level design, something which goes a long way for a game like this. In Data Dream, the levels feel very limited and claustrophobic, feeling like textured geometry with a few obstacles and enemies sprinkled in. The levels do have some variety in their looks, but you never feel like you're in a large space. Wherever you look, the boundaries are very visible and very close by. Audio-wise, I liked Data Dream though. It really does capture the title almost perfectly. It's a dream in the digital space, and the soundtrack reflects that in an effective manner, with its almost whimsical feeling melodies. Charles was very honest when claiming that the game plays like a Spyro title, with the game having a very familiar control scheme to the PlayStation Classic. This comes at the expense of the keyboard and mouse however, with the game feeling really awkward and clunky, something that is the same for most games that take some inspiration from this era. This isn't a problem if you have a controller, or well, it shouldn't be. When first loading up the game, I actually found that I couldn't play it with either my Xbox One or DualShock 4 controllers, but Charles was really helpful and gave us the fix, which involved opening Steam Big Picture, heading over to Data Dream, clicking on Manage Game, then Controller Options, and turning the Steam input per game setting off. Afterwards, the Xbox controller worked perfectly fine, and I was able to play the game as intended, with the movement feeling a lot more fluid. It allowed me to get into a flow a lot easier, and really made it so I can experience this game properly. That's not to say that the controller fixed all of my issues. One of the key problems I had with Data Dream is the combat. Whether you're using a keyboard, a mouse, or a controller, the combat in Data Dream just feels a little wrong. The primary attack has a small range, and the hit detection just feels off. It's even worse on the charge attack Shockwave, which feels like you need to be touching the enemy to even land a hit, which becomes a problem when you only have 3 hits before you die and then have to start again. It needs more polish. That's the word for me. Polish. Whilst I do think the game is good conceptually and has some fantastic ideas, the execution just comes across as a bit rough for me, and it kind of drags down the experience. It's certainly not a bad or offensive game by any means, and I did enjoy playing it. I found it really chill, but it's just nothing to write home about outside of the ideas that it presents. If you want to hear an extended discussion about my time with Data Dream, why not head over to the Vividshim Patreon right now, where you can find the How Bad Can It Be extended podcast. It's a place where I basically get to talk about things in more detail, explain why I said certain things in this video, and maybe even talk about some things that I didn't get to include because of time reasons. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you soon.